Hello, I'm Hugh Coakley from the Guildford Dragon News. Over the past few years, we've been talking about the decline of the high street. 2 years ago, Sir John Timpson said that there were twice as many shops in the town centre as were actually necessary. Now, Debenhams have gone, top shops in administration and now sold to an online company. There are whole rows of shops in the High Street and North Street empty. Footfall has been going down monthly, year on year, month on month. And empty shops are about 13% or possibly more if we count the shops that won't open or possibly won't open after the pandemic. So huge changes are happening. But what will our town centre look like in the future? And depending on what is actually wanted, what is being done, what can be done. So with us to discuss these points are Amanda Masters from Experience Guildford, representing businesses on the Business Improvement District, Councillor John Redpath, Executive Member on Guildford Borough Council and Lead Member for the Economy, and Alex Bellion, Director of Ownership, Guildford Commercial Property Agents. So welcome to you all and thank you for talking to the Guildford Dragon News. To start with, can I ask you to give me an update on the town centre from your perspective? Amanda, can I ask you to start? Has COVID just hastened the inevitable? What's the percentage of empty shops now? Do you have a feel for how many shops will not reopen after after lockdown?
Well, thank you, Hugh. I can tell you were spot on. It's around the 13% mark in terms of voids in the town centre currently, and that is the highest that Guildford has had certainly in my sort of 9 years in this role. Yes. COVID has accelerated what was already happening out there. There's no two ways about it. The town centre will never be as it was pre-COVID. That's not necessarily a very bad thing. That actually presents a lot of opportunities for us as a town, as a group, to actually make changes that are meaningful, community-driven. But within partnerships, it can't just be the bid by itself. It can't just be the council by itself. So we need to look at the picture now. And yes, you painted a very less than optimistic picture just now with your preamble. However, we are going to lose some. You mentioned Debenhams. Yeah, top shop. Unfortunately, Arcadia's gone that way too. I do know of one other independent who won't reopen, but that's nothing to do with decline in his sales. It's more to do with the fact that he's coming to the end of his professional career and wants to retire and put his feet up a bit. But that will leave a void where people will go, oh, another shop's gone, oh God. Actually, there are other reasons other than decline of retail and COVID as to why businesses move and change.
Amanda, what are businesses telling you? What are traders telling you? What's their mood?
Their mood, well, pretty much the same as yours or mine, I should imagine, at the moment. We're in the middle of another lockdown. We feel like we're in Groundhog Day. You know, those that are lucky enough, like myself, to continue working are generally working from home. It's not an ideal situation. That said, with the government grants that have just come through for the retailers and hospitality, there is now a sense of, well, at least we know where we stand. At least we know what we've got. We can pay our suppliers, we can pay our bills, we can pay our rent, all the things that still have to be paid, even though they're not operating. So there's a slight sense of optimism from that point of view. However, anxiety, worry is prevalent, and that's everybody. But yeah, of course, people are worried about it. We don't know until Boris lays out a roadmap when we're going to be able to reopen. Would it be Easter? Would it be May? What? When? So it's uncertainty that's the worst thing at the moment. But there are those that are trading online. There are those doing click and collect. There are the essential stores staying open and providing amazing services for local community. So there is still, business is still open, just not as it was.
John, from your perspective, who are the winners and who are the losers? Sorry, did you hear me, John? Sorry. John, did you hear me?
Are you talking to me here?
Yes, John, yeah. Did you hear me?
So sorry, you're terribly, still a little muffled.
I'm sorry, John. Who are the winners and
Winners,
who are the losers?
Winners and losers. It's a bit early to say. Obviously, you know, the real losers, and this is something that we must remember right up at the front, and those are those people whose jobs are threatened, those people who are going to lose their jobs, those people who are going to need retraining into something else, into the new industries. And as a borough council, we have a lot of free schemes going, job clubs and the such like, to help retrain people. It's all free, all paid for through the council. And so anybody who's worried about wanting to retrain or anything like that, they must get onto our website. So those to me are the real losers. But you know what we're seeing, as I've said before, I think it's the evolution of the high street. You mentioned 2, 3, 5 years ago, I can't remember, was it 2 years ago? Go back 100 years, go back 150 years, I can guarantee you there were far less shops open than there are now. And those are the shops that the public wanted at the time. And we've got to go back to that. And we've got to go back to the department stores being what they were supposed to be, where you get maybe small independents sharing a large shop space, doing independent type stuff that's really interesting, and make Guildford interesting again. When I first went to Guildford, it had little lanes, it had little shops here, there and everywhere. Up where the YMCA is, and is it, what's the name of the solicitors? Stephen Bolton's or whatever. That was all a fantastic, interesting part of town. It was more like the lanes of Brighton than what it is, certainly what it is now. So we've got to start creating that specialness. And the answer is simple. There are two ways we can keep our shops going, in my view at the moment. First is to take advantage of Guildford's attractiveness, to take advantage of the heritage and the interest, to get people in from all over the southeast. Okay, don't rely on just your locals coming in from Woking or Farnham or what have you. We've got to spread our area and give people a reason to come into town, give people a reason to stay over the weekend, you know, for a whole, you know, maybe a long weekend or something like that. And we've got to work together on that. And the other one is perfectly obvious. If you can't beat them, join them. And we've got to create a good e-commerce platform for all these shops so that they can actually sell stuff online as well. Right now, there's absolutely no reason why those shops can't be selling online. You go somewhere like Weir Roads, look at the poster up in Weir Roads. Weir Roads are closed at the moment, obviously. Poster up there, you know, refer to blah, blah, blah website, and they're trading online. And the shops are going to have to adapt. They're going to have to evolve to the situation we're in now. And the problem with large stores like Debenhams, House of Fraser, they're too slow to adapt. They're monsters in a way, and they've got to realise they've got to get the small independents in. And instead of, you know, an acre of perfumes, let's have an acre of something made locally and something very interesting.
Alex, commercial property view, what's happening to shop rents?
General downwards tone, really. I mean, the vacancy rates, obviously at 13%, are higher than I've ever known them as well. But I read quite an interesting article, I think a very snippet in the Estates Gazette, which mentions that we were the most resilient high street after Cambridge in the country, which paints quite a picture when you compare Guildford to the rest of the UK. So we are quite lucky in that fact. We're seeing demand change hugely, and as Amanda touched on, and as John touched on, we have to look at retailers are just not taking additional shops at the moment. You need to look at service space occupiers, be that sort of quasi leisure uses, to bring the footfall back to the town centre. And we are starting to see that change a bit more on the upper high street, where the ownership of the buildings are a bit more local, rather than being owned by pension funds. And landlords are taking a view and want to look at independent retailers, not necessarily multi-occupiers.
Okay, so Alex, some chains have been withholding rents, possibly because of the moratorium on evictions. Are independent traders trying it out with the landlords as well in order to get rents and terms eased?
To a certain extent, but I think that's more because, you know, the traditional A1 retailers, anyone in events or hospitality, you know, hasn't traded for 9 months out of the last 12. Most landlords have been realistic, and as well as the government grants, have offered half rent for a number of months, or even rent-free periods for up to 2 quarters in some instances. You're right insofar as the multi-occupiers, you know, the Corals, the Betfreds, the you know, Ladbrokes and the Crew Clothings of this world, you know, they have used their advisors to negotiate a bit more strongly perhaps than independents have, and that has just been a non-payment of rent for the vast majority of them.
Is that an option for independent traders, or don't they have the muscle?
It comes down to a bit of financial clout as well. You know, the larger guys know that you're not going to take them to court to forfeit the lease, that they can fight you in the courts. Whereas as the small guys, you know, they've spent all their money trying to trade for the last 12 years. They don't have the finances to fight a court battle.
Okay, looking now to how we see the high street. John, on to you. Thank you all for those summaries. John, how do you see the next 12 months, possibly the next 5 years? Will there be a move from Upper Street sort of gravitating towards the core, the cobbled area, as it were? Do you think that's going to happen?
It would be great if we could plan it like that. You know, we could make a really nice compact centre. Unfortunately, it doesn't really work for that. I think short term, what we're going to see an almighty great boom. I don't know how long it'll last for, maybe a few weeks, maybe a few weekends. But there is so much pent-up frustration. You know, when I go walking on the downs at the weekend, which I often do, always have done with the dog, suddenly there are a lot more people walking on the downs. Well, where did they used to go for their walk? They used to go into the town centre. There must be an incredible pent-up frustration in, you know, the people who like to shop, people who like to go to the pub, people who like to go away for weekends. And I think we're going to see a mini boom, okay? That may last right through the summer, I don't know. But after that, that's when it's going to get, you know, really tough. The biggest worry, I think, is these sounds that are coming out of central government again, where there's going to be this sort of random policy where developers can just, you know, shut the doors and start developing housing in empty shops. And that really, really is a worry, because that scattergun approach is just absolute madness. I'm all for integrating homes with commercial shops, businesses and the such like. Sustainability is very good from that point of view, but to do it in a crazy way like this, I mean, somebody at central government, I'm sorry, needs their head changing or something if they think that's a good plan.
Alex, how do you see the next 12 months? Are businesses moving away from the town centre out to the suburbs, to the local shopping parades?
Yeah, I heard it described as a polo mint effect, which is the town centres are getting hollowed out, and you're seeing good demand for these strong secondary and tertiary parades. I mean, we just put a unit on, for example, at Woodbridge Hill, 37, which was the former cooperative funeral care building. I've probably had 12 viewings and 6 offers. Mainly from food users, but a couple of retailers, Italian deli style cafes, and I think we will see certainly the secondary locations stay strong, but hopefully some sort of life returning to the prime high street as well. And we have seen inquiries picking up in the last 4 weeks or so since the turn of the new year, which is positive. Okay,
Amanda, you talked about opportunities. What are business people seeing as the opportunity in the decline of the high street?
Well, this is basically what the chap here just said. I mean, the next 12 months agree with John. There's going to be a boom because people are so passionate about local and supporting local, which is why the parades on the outskirts of town in more urban areas are booming at the moment, because people are staying at home and they're supporting local. Now that's exactly what I hope and I really think will happen in Guildford in the short term, in the next 12 months. But the town will be shaped by demand from the community. It will be shaped. There won't be more large multiple retailers coming in, I don't think, because I don't think the demand is there anymore. At the moment, that may change, but the evolution is it has to serve the community on its doorstep. And there are things that block this, which worries me for the 5-year outlook for the town centre. The permitted development rights that John touched on is concerning, because it's a very scattergun, or it could be a very scattergun approach to development of units and what have you. But also we need to start thinking about what's the policy on retail frontages. What do we have to stick with just retail? If no retailer wants to come to an empty unit, then why not let a chiropractor in, or an osteopath, or whatever, or a soft play?
I mean, there's nothing at the moment. There's nothing to stop them do that. I believe there's been some relaxations in planning law. Am I right, Alex? Is that right?
Well, it has eased since September last year, and there's this now e-user class, and they've replaced the old outdated, I believe it's 1988 county and town planning order. Touching on the permitted development thing a little bit, what we are lucky in is that the vast majority of the high streets throughout Guildford and Waverley are in conservation areas, and permitted development is not allowed within these conservation areas. Right. So the loss of, say, for the upper high street, for example, being turned into residential, it's just never going to happen. There may be upper parts that are converted here and there, but the wholesale loss of a high street hopefully will be precluded by that. So that's a benefit. We just have to consider alternative uses, is my view on the high street, not just pure retailers. Okay, they have to be, like Amanda's touched on.
We've talked about the current situation. We've talked about what we think the future is. Alex, starting with you, what do you think can be done? What do you think should be done, especially what's within our own purview?
I think landlords just have to be sensible, and we all know that everyone's had a tough time over the last 12 months. And I think that's being sensible on more flexible lease terms potentially. We've the obvious thing being a lower rent, but then also planning items just generally uses. We just have to be practical and try and get footfall back into the town centre as well in the right way.
Okay. Amanda, I see that you're backing a shopkeepers campaign with regard to business rate reform. Is that key of what should be done?
Always crucial. Business rates system is just archaic, and it needs reform. It needs to be a slight, not slightly, very much a level playing field. Not fair that our bricks and mortar businesses have these extortionate rates in our town centre, yet Amazon can have a warehouse in the middle of nowhere and pay virtually nothing. Now, I know there's the online tax come through, but what does that actually look like? I think that's maybe just a rise in prices for the Amazon shopper, and they will swallow that for convenience. Still doesn't help our high street. So business rates reform has to happen now, and we've always said this as a bid. It's wrong, absolutely wrong.
John, again, last question to yourself. We're running out of time. You talk to businesses a lot as you go into the town. One of the first solutions I always hear from traders is parking. What's your view on that?
So parking does provide quite a lot of revenue for the council. I know a lot of people say, oh, just, we're bleeding them dry and we're making money out of them. But and you know, we should let everybody park for nothing, and you know, that will encourage shop. These arguments are terrible. What frustrates me is people who complain about paying £1.60 to park a car and then go and buy a £3.20 cup of coffee. You know, in some of the car parks now, you can park for £3 for 3 hours. That's cheaper than a cup of coffee, okay? And people are complaining about it. As a council, we need that money, otherwise we have to get it from somewhere else. And as I think everybody should be aware, we're going to see some very, very tough years, not just because of COVID, but just because government has stopped giving us any significant funding. But I'd like to just throw one thing in here, Hugh, and that's the local plan. And I know maybe the local plan shouldn't come into this conversation, but at the moment, the biggest thing we have to get over is 41,000 square metres of retail we're meant to be putting in according to the local plan in North Street. And that's something that we're going to have to address somehow to get the planning changed for that, because that just ain't going to happen, I don't think. I mean, maybe Alex has a more optimistic view.
We don't need it, John. We don't need more retail space.
No,
They need it needs to be mixed use, and like Amanda touched on, you know, soft play centres. It needs to have an element of retail, but it needs to be led by other uses as well.
Is the council putting review of the local plan as a priority, John?
Yeah, okay. At the moment, we are working flat out on what's known as the DMP, which is the second part of the local plan, which says, well, okay, here are the strategic sites. This is what we'd like to see on them, you know, the type of housing and so forth. We are in the background doing some reviews of the local plan, but, you know, that's a long process. That's going to be 2.5 years before we see anything from that. We've got to find a way of responding a lot quicker to the situation we're in now and trying to drop at least, I would say, 30,000 square metres of the 41,000, if not more. And we're looking at things like, you know, maybe it would be nice if there's a microbrewery in there or something like that in the North Street development. Well, that's all very nice until you think, well, actually, we've pedestrianised it. So how do you get a lorry in to pick up all those cans of beer? So we juggle around a bit, make it an interesting area and get away from the really basic sort of retail that we know at the moment.
Fascinating discussion.
Residentially led, though, if we're having residential in this in the development, surely we should leave it to the residents to demand the type of retail, leisure, hospitality is within that mix, rather than just prescribe it.
Fascinating discussion.
My father was a town architect. And what they used to do was they used to leave the parks how the parks were until people had walked on them. And when they saw where everybody was walking, that's when they put footpaths in. Very simple, really. We could do the same thing.
Yeah.
Thank you all. Thank you very much. Sorry about the internet quality, but hopefully it will come out. Hopefully people will be able to hear you. Thank you very, very much, Amanda, Alex and John. We will no doubt be talking again. Thank you.
Lovely to see you here. Thanks very much.
Nice to speak to you. Thank you.
Thank you.